Today, the stock market dipping, major indexes down around 2%, but experts have been warning of an even bigger market correction. And the White House is planning to ease travel restrictions for foreign visitors who've been vaccinated against the virus. The borders have been closed for over a year for many. And a natural gas crisis in the United Kingdom. High prices forcing several suppliers out of business. Others are now asking the government for help. That and much more coming up at NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Wall Street dipped today amid a broad sell-off, the Nasdaq falling to its lowest level in about a month. The Dow fell 614 points or 1.8%, S&P 500 lost 75 points or 1.7%. The Nasdaq dropped 330 points today, 2.2%. Strategists at Morgan Stanley had expected a 10% correction in the S&P as the Fed starts to unwind its monetary support, also adding that signs of a stalling economic growth could deepen that correction to 20%. Shares of China's struggling property giant Evergrande fell another 10% today. They're down over 20% in the last week. It's supposed to pay $83 million in bond interest on Thursday and has another $47 million due at the end of the month. Both bonds would default if Evergrande can't pay the interest within 30 days. It's China's second largest property developer with $300 billion in outstanding liabilities. 2 weeks ago, media reports revealed it was having issues and wouldn't be able to cover some of its loan interest that it was about to fall due. So, anxious Chinese residents filled its headquarters demanding repayment. Many are now waiting to see if the Chinese Communist Party will try to bail it out to prevent a potential debt crisis, but there's no indication it will. So joining us to discuss the Evergrande debacle in China is Chief Economist at the Tressis Hedge Fund, Daniel Lacaille. Lacaille helps manage $6 billion of assets at Tressis. Daniel, pleasure to see you. Are you expecting a default here? And if you are, is there a risk of kind of global contagion like we're hearing?
I think that the risk of a default is almost inevitable because the situation of Evergrande has been of weakening its cash flow situation and its balance sheet since 2012. It's been reducing its official leverage, but its unofficial leverage, its total liabilities have been rising and rising dramatically. The other problem with Evergrande is that it's a company that has been using a strategy of running to stand still, adding more debt to refinance maturing debt, putting more liabilities with very, very weak cash flow generation. And that is a strategy that has been followed not just by this company, but by other property developers in China.
You think that kind of impact is enough? We will feel it here in the States or in Europe, etc., or?
I don't think it's going to be very significant in developed economies, but we cannot ignore, and I think that that's why emerging market banks or banks linked to emerging market financing have suffered in the stock market, is because China has played a very significant role in the financing of very questionable projects all over Latin America and frontier economies in Africa. Therefore, many of these economies that have relied on Chinese lending for very, very doubtful projects are going to see a credit crunch. So I would say that there is a risk of certainly impact on the exporting nations of developed economies that export a lot to China. Germany, for example, is a case in point. I think there is a risk of contagion into the banks that finance into emerging markets and also those banks that have been very exposed to emerging economies and to China itself.
How big a risk is it to the Chinese regime there? They have a difficult choice on their hands because even if they do let Evergrande default, it's not just the big investors who are going to get burned. I think something like 2 million Chinese residents have already paid a deposit for a home there that hasn't been built. Well, what happens from a political sense?
Chinese government, this is not an easy situation because it's caught between a rock and a hard place. If it, on the one hand, decides to bail out Evergrande, obviously it's going to generate a very significant risk of basically incentivizing higher risk from other companies, because if one looks at the worst performer and it's bailed out, then it's almost a free-for-all to continue to misbehave, isn't it? The second one is that if it doesn't, millions of people in China are going to suffer from two effects. One, you've just mentioned, the fact that many citizens have already paid advances for properties that will never be developed. Second, a lot of citizens in China are going to suffer the credit crunch of the banking system that will have to curb lending to households. So it's a very, very difficult situation. If it bails out Evergrande, it's going to get into a worse situation in a couple of years' time. And if it doesn't bail it out, we find that there's likely to be a very significant credit crunch and very severe impact on those citizens that have already paid in advance to reserve some of these properties.
And the U.S. plans to reopen air travel to foreign passengers who've been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Rolls back travel restrictions from last year put in place to combat the virus. Beginning early November, most vaccinated passengers from China, India, Britain, and many other European countries will be allowed to enter again. The U.S. was under pressure to ease restrictions, especially for British travellers. The UK started allowing vaccinated American travellers to enter the UK in August. The US didn't change its policy. There will be some exceptions to the vaccine mandate. Children who aren't eligible to be vaccinated yet won't have to comply. And the new rules don't apply to travellers crossing land borders with Mexico and Canada. And home builders in the United States seem to feel a little better in September after sentiment dropped to its lowest level in 13 months in August. Sentiment among single-family home builders rose modestly, according to the National Association of Home Builders. But it wasn't all rainbows and confetti. Hiring difficulties and building supply chain issues are still around. Job openings in the United States have hit a record high, including 320,000 vacancies in construction. Lumber is down more than 60% from its May peak, but overall, material costs have risen 13% on an annual basis so far this year. Materials like steel and aluminum are both rising significantly all year. So joining us to discuss the rising prices is Dennis Gagnon, the CEO of Belt Technologies in Massachusetts. It's a maker of steel belts and robotics. Dennis, pleasure to have you in the show. Thanks for coming on. How difficult is it to do business when prices for things like aluminum and steel are rising so fast?
Well, it's definitely for us. It's a bit unprecedented in that we are buying not direct steel from the mill, but more processed steel. So that tends to keep the prices relatively stable for us, and that there's a lot of labor already built in. But even with our vendors lately, in the last few months, we've certainly been noticing not just the price increases, but the much more difficulty in finding the raw materials we need as available as they always were. So that the supply chain issues are starting to affect us in a fairly significant way.
Because I assume these processors, they can only absorb these costs themselves for so long, right?
That's exactly right. And so it's definitely a case where, you know, it'll show up as a surcharge in our case, but what they're doing is adjusting for that significant increase in the underlying commodity price of the steel. And then it's not just the steel, but certainly, I mean, yeah, we deal with a bit of aluminum in making our full conveyor systems. Those prices have certainly jumped quite a bit. And then it's many of the other raw materials that we use, if it's any kind of resin-based material, even just the corrugated boxes to ship their products in. We're seeing fairly significant double-digit price increases across the board. So that is a challenge to absorb that ourselves and to pass it on. And we try to do that selectively as a case-by-case basis, depending on the situation and the customer.
Do you feel it will ease soon, or are you afraid that these perhaps even shortages will get even worse?
I think it's certainly our feeling, and what we're planning for is that it's going to be worse in the near term before it gets better. And my crystal ball is a little hazy on what the near term means. Hopefully it's a matter of months, but I think we're still in a worsening condition for hopefully sometime in 2022. We'll see things start to ease and correct.
Dennis Gagnon, Belt Technologies. And Santa Claus may have his work cut out this year. Demand for toys is at an all-time high, but U.S. suppliers and retailers are racing to outrun severe air, sea, and land shipping challenges. NTD's Faye Corder has the details.
The holidays account for a major chunk of the toy industry's nearly $33 billion annual sales. And this holiday season, industry watchers say they are seeing record demand. In the first 7 months of 2021, U.S. imports of dolls, toys, and games averaged $1.88 billion per month, up 50% from the same period in 2019. But hitches in logistics could result in empty-handed consumers and lost sales for retailers like Walmart and Target. Health worries have hit port operations in key exporters such as Vietnam, and there have been gaps in shelves among seasonal items, including school supplies and backpacks, Halloween decor, and costumes. 6 leading toy makers have said they are using pricey cargo planes, routing shipments to new seaports, and asking retailers like Target to do their own shipping. One expert says the price of cargo flights has more than doubled, and there's little or no capacity left between now and year's end. Walmart and Target have hired their own ships to secure goods. Mattel in July warned that its supplies were disrupted. But Lego says it isn't experiencing significant disruption to the overall products supply because its factories and distribution centers are close to its markets. Faye Corder, NTD News.
The UK government is reassuring people they will have energy to heat their homes this winter. Comes as a surge in natural gas prices has forced several energy suppliers to go bust, and many more asking for government support. NTD's Patrick Hayden in London has more.
The UK's largest energy suppliers are asking the government for a multi-billion-pound emergency support package. That's to tackle soaring gas prices as energy suppliers become non-profitable.
You're seeing big spikes in gas prices.
Industry group Oil and Gas UK says wholesale prices for suppliers increased by 250% since January, with a 70% rise since August. Some businesses, like chemical factories, have had to close because of the high prices of gas. Gas suppliers are proposing that the government create a bad bank to take on customers from failed suppliers. It could help avoid weakening companies that are otherwise strong.
So the idea of a bad loans bank or something similar to that does make sense.
UK Business and Energy Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng will meet with energy suppliers Monday to discuss potential solutions.
The UK's got a pretty high reliance on gas. There's been quite a lot of switching away from coal in the UK. Again, UK was one of the first places to put a carbon tax in place.
Half of the UK's electricity is generated from gas-fired plants, and it has a regulator that caps consumer prices.
Well, I don't think gas prices should be regulated.
5 energy suppliers have collapsed since the start of August, and another 4 are expected to go under before the end of the month.
And is that there's the energy price cap that's imposed by the government, by the regulator, which doesn't move as fast as gas prices and energy prices have moved up. So yes, ultimately you could see you will see prices move up. You will see the end the customers having to foot the bill, but that could be a year or so away.
The Financial Times reports that further failings could mean that as many as 1 million customers may have to transfer to new energy providers. Patrick Hayden, NTD News, London.
And U.S. auto safety investigators have opened a new probe into 30 million vehicles with the potentially defective Takata airbags, according to Reuters. The vehicles have inflators with a drying agent known as desiccant. The National Highway Traffic Administration says there's no present safety risk identified with the drying agent, but further study is needed to assess whether the inflators with this substance are safe in the long term. The new investigation covers vehicles by many car makers, including Ford, GM, Honda, and Toyota, with model years from 2001 to 2019. More than 67 million Takata airbags have been recalled in the U.S. over the last decade, and more than 100 million worldwide. It's the industry's largest recall in history, related to 28 deaths worldwide and more than 400 injuries. And SpaceX's all-civilian Inspiration 4 crew is back on Earth. They landed over the weekend after orbiting the planet for 3 days, and while they were up there, they gave some interviews and played some ukulele. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
SpaceX's all-civilian space crew returned to Earth over the weekend, splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of Florida. Here's Commander Jared Isaacman's first words to Earth upon return.
Thanks so much, SpaceX. It was a heck of a ride for us. It's just getting started.
Copy, just getting started.
The capsule had to be inspected and installed with rigging hardware before it could be lifted. All this took place in good weather.
The crew is in good spirits, watching some entertainment while they wait.
Finally, the capsule was lifted.
And here comes Dragon out of the water,
letting the crew exit in the order of Haley Arsenault, Cyan Proctor, Chris Sembrowski, and Commander Jared Isaacman. While the crew was in space, they gave interviews to us back on Earth.
When we first got strapped into the rocket, it felt like time was moving really slowly. Like the countdown clock was barely moving. And then when you got down to like the last 5 minutes, it was racing. And we just saw those numbers disappear real quick. And before you knew it, you heard liftoff. And then the whole journey uphill was only about 12 minutes. So before we knew it, we were hanging our straps and floating.
Physician assistant Haley Arsenault gave us a great view of Earth.
Hey everyone, so what we're looking at is the Earth from our perspective. So we are flying this huge window, the biggest window that's ever been flown in space, and looking through the window, we can see the entire perimeter of the Earth, which is so beautiful. And so I hope that you're getting to see what we see, which is passing over some really beautiful water.
Someone also brought a ukulele.
You can turn your volume down if you wish, but I'll give it a shot. And it's still before coffee. So, it'll get better as the day goes on.
Elon Musk congratulated the crew over Twitter. When Twitter user Electric Cyber Farmer asked Musk why President Biden hasn't acknowledged the civilian flight, Musk responded, "He's still sleeping." Don Ma, NTD News.
This year's Emmys showed that Apple TV is maybe catching up with its competitors. Not only that, the entire industry seems to be shifting. Here's NTD's Evelyn Lee with more on that.
The hit comedy Ted Lasso won 7 awards for Apple TV Plus at this year's Emmys. And with this milestone, the platform joins the streaming elite just 2 years after launching.
And the Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series goes to Ted Lasso. Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso!
For Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso!
Apple has been planning to expand its original content to better compete with its rivals. That includes Netflix and Prime Video. Earlier this year, a report said Apple wants to buy over 150,000 square feet of real estate in Hollywood to produce its original content. And not only Apple TV hit a milestone, Netflix shows won a total of 44 awards this year. Dennis L. Reed, the head of development for Homestead Entertainment, says that his company fully counts on streaming platforms now.
I don't even consider it traditional television anymore because you have only 24 hours on traditional TV. With a Hulu or with a Tubi or something like that, they pick what they want to watch.
He also says that streaming platforms could take different chances instead of going the traditional route. The Queen's Gambit, one of the big wins of the night, thanked Netflix for taking a chance on risky material. The Emmy Awards this year highlighted the TV industry's rapid shift away from traditional TV. And for the first time ever, the three biggest trophies for outstanding drama, comedy, and limited or anthology series all went to streaming services. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
While streaming and cable services still dominate the market, the good old TV antenna is quietly making a comeback. NTD's Phil Zoe speaks to one entrepreneur who's restoring free and over-the-air television in America, one family at a time.
To honor one of their own.
Remember when TV was fuzzy, staticky, and you didn't know if the TV signal was going to be good or not? But technology is advancing. TV antennas evolving. Sales for TV antennas are now up 4% in the past year. Meanwhile, pay-for-TV services like cable and satellite were down 6% in 2020 and were down 5% in 2019. Americans can still get quality TV for free if they find the right antenna. Meet Tyler Kleinley, better known as Antenna Man.
What better way to save money than to get television free over the air with an antenna?
Kleinley's passion with over-the-air television started at a young age.
When I was 5 years old, I remember turning on a TV set in my parents' house, and it was picking up TV stations without anything plugged into it. And I was completely fascinated at the time that my parents were paying for cable. They were getting it through a cord, yet it's available for free just through the airwaves. I was completely fascinated by that.
Now he's on a mission to restore over-the-air TV for families across the United States.
I have an antenna recommendation service where I'll actually look up people's addresses and then tell them what antenna they need based on their specific location.
Kleinley's growing YouTube channel, Antenna Man, has almost 200,000 subscribers with 20 million lifetime views.
I look at it and it's almost like a stock that just keeps going up. So people are definitely cutting the cord.
Now he's getting more calls than ever, up to 15 people daily asking for his help.
Somewhere along the line, people started charging and paying for it, and it kind of lost its roots. So I'm very glad that television is going back to the way it was supposed to be, free over the air with an antenna.
He's expecting TV to make a big comeback, where even one day you can watch local live TV on your smartphone, even without an internet connection. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
Still to come this evening. Look at Ford F-150, another hybrid pickup truck is hitting the market. Toyota says its latest version of the Tundra will include a hybrid option. An artist improves Capitol paint a giant mural that can be seen from across the city. They're trying to brighten up a neighborhood and remove an old stigma. That and more after this short break. Welcome back. Toyota says it plans to roll out its own hybrid pickup truck. Company said Sunday the latest version of the Tundra will include a hybrid twin-turbo V6 option. Released this video showing off some of the truck's new features. Toyota says the hybrid system will have more horsepower and more torque than the Tundra's standard engine. Toyota's Tundra joins the Ford F-150 in the hybrid pickup space. And it was a tiny house before tiny houses were cool. Only about 6 feet wide, Boston's so-called skinny house was sold for more than $1.2 million. According to local legend, this unusual 4-level structure is the result of a sibling rivalry between two brothers more than a century ago. One brother built the slender house directly in front of his brother's home to block his view. That earned it another nickname, the Spite House. Over the years, the home has become a tourist attraction in Boston's North End. It's not clear yet if the new owners will let any of those tourists take a look inside. And artists in Peru's capital are working to transform one hillside neighborhood. They're taking their inspiration from ancient patterns. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
Artists in Peru's capital want to make a giant mural that can be seen across the city. It's called Project Rainbow. They plan to paint more than 1,000 houses in the San Cristobal neighborhood. When completed, they say it will be the largest mural in Peru.
We have long dreamed of the transformation of our neighborhood through murals, and what we are achieving now is to paint a great mural that spans through all houses in our sector, using a design of chacanas.
The artwork features multicolored chacanas, a pattern from ancient Andean cultures. The Energy Artistic Collective says it wants to bring a new look to what is perceived as a dangerous area of Lima. The hope is to also create jobs and a sense of belonging among the residents.
This is a stigma we want to change, of everyone saying this was a very dangerous place for many years, during which we experienced maybe not shame, but annoyance. From that feeling, we wanted to change the way this hill is seen, and to be seen differently, in a better way. Who would be better than us, who know how to use color?
The hills in Lima are settled on an arid seaside, and are composed mostly of desert sand. People migrated from remote towns in Peru and settled here, and their houses were left without painting, leaving gray and brown materials exposed. The city aims to refurbish the facades of houses for at least 10,000 residents. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
That's the latest business updates for today, but you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.